Hi, this is Amy Moonsong. Thank you so much for joining me today. We're going to be talking about Cancer season and Cancer as a aspect of each one of our personalities, an aspect of each one of our beings that we really have the opportunity to tap into and learn about during the time that the season is actually happening throughout the year. I'm the writer and the creator of the Zodiac Immersion, which is a program that gives people the opportunity to look at the zodiac and to look at the tarot and to look at the seasons and to look at personal growth through the lenses of the 12 signs of the zodiac. And instead of seeing it as simply how our birth charts are made or these energies that are only specific to what time of the year you're born, is to go so much deeper into this and understand that as this wheel is progressing every year, we're getting taken into different energies that light up different aspects of who we are in terms of our emotions, in terms of our consciousness, how we think about things, how we learn, in terms of our sense of self, our ego, our self-confidence, how we maneuver ourselves in that way, in terms of our physical being and our sensations, how we feel life and how we connect to our bodies, how we connect to the world, how we do things in our lives. So we're going to be putting the emphasis today on Cancer energy, which takes us into our emotions. It's the first water sign, so it has to do with our first experiences of feeling emotionally safe or feeling emotionally connected. How did we learn how to communicate how we feel? How do we learn how to identify how we feel? And were we raised in an environment that created safety for that, or where we had to protect ourselves and not actually say how we feel? Because this sets the tone for how we learn to, number one, connect with ourselves and validate ourselves, and number two, how we learn to connect and validate with our desires, what it is we actually want in life, what it is that we feel, and number three, how we're able to connect to other people, and how we create the balance point in our lives between our inner boundaries and how we stay in who we are, how we honor and validate who we are, and how we're also able to connect with other people and relate and merge with people, which is what Scorpio is actually about. So I hope that this gives you some wisdom that you can connect to and some insight on how you can more consciously work with this aspect of yourself if you're finding that you would like to open up, understand, communicate, and start to change and transform the quality of relationship that you have to your own emotional self and how you have relationships with people and set your boundaries. I hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome to our Cancer season presentation. So this presentation, I think we could say, had a mind or a heart of its own and has already required a tremendous amount of being deep in this energy, which has actually made it very difficult to make this presentation. But I am at a point where I feel like I can talk about some of the things that I've been feeling, which is what Cancer season is all about. This is the sign, the fourth sign of the zodiac that happens at the beginning of summer, that is all about our relationship, our foundational relationship to emotions, our relationship to how we feel safe connecting with people, having an open heart, as well as being able to have healthy boundaries and being able to protect ourselves. So this can just as much be about forming strong bonds as it can be about forming codependency. And this really comes down to how have we done at consciously engaging the other signs up to this point. This is where the connection really happens, is in this sign. We see that integration, and we'll talk about that more when we're in the Chariot card. But just as an overview, we're going to be looking at this cardinal water aspect
of Cancer, which is, what does cardinal water look like, right? That's the beginning of a new season. What does it look like for water to be initiatory? And really the answer to that is that that's being emotionally open. It's being emotionally receptive, and it's being emotionally responsive. So the willingness to open up your heart is a cardinal act. So the willingness to start a relationship, the willingness to form bonds, we see that coming forth in cardinal water. We have the symbol of the crab in Cancer, and in so many ways this is representing this creature that lives in the water, and it has this very, very tender, soft center that is protected by this hard shell, this exoskeleton. And so that's referencing that this really is the most sensitive part of us. And so it's the relationship to how do we grow a skin that is tough enough to be soft in this world, and how sometimes we don't. Sometimes we are too soft and we don't have that exoskeleton protecting us. Sometimes the exoskeleton is too strong. And so thus the crab is this reference to Cancer. And one of my favorite expressions that I was given in terms of the crab, I think it came from Molly McCord, was to say that Cancerians really do not like conflict at all. And so like the crab, they will walk sideways, like in terms of confrontation, they will try to go around it. They may not be able to feel comfortable saying what they feel, again, because this is all about how safe do you feel to express your feelings. You know, what was your relationship to that like growing up? So you can see in Cancerian energy sometimes a little bit more of the manipulative, like, look this way sort of behavior. I'm going to talk my way around getting to the point so I don't have to be direct with you because, you know, it feels too abrasive, you know, sort of thing. You can have that energy coming up. But it can also be a very compassionate and sensitive way to approach things, right? That can also be having tact, right? It doesn't have to be an unhealthy thing. In terms of the moon is the sign that rules Cancer. But this is so poignant and important because this is the only sign that the moon rules. Just like Leo is the only sign that the sun rules. And it's interesting that these two come one after the other. And in the tarot, interestingly, the moon card comes right before the sun card. So there's a very important reference here to these dual natures. I also find it very interesting that the sign preceding Cancer really is where we get the integration of duality. And what is duality? How do we use it to learn? How do we understand it? How do we integrate it? We have to learn that in Gemini before we really fully engage these full-on dualities of the moon and the sun. The moon being the internal, the feminine, the feeling nature, the sun being the external, the masculine, and the expressing nature. So we're going to talk a lot about the moon and how that gives us such an interesting reference point for understanding the sign of Cancer, what the moon really represents in us, and what it represents in our astrological charts, right? Your moon is expressing your internal nature, your feeling nature, how you process your emotions, right? Where you feel safe, where you feel safest. And the moon in more medieval traditional astrology is one of the singular most powerful influences in the chart by virtue of the fact that it is so close to our planet. And this idea is that all of the rays of the other planetary powers get filtered and directed through the moon. So it has such a strong impression on us in the same way that it governs the tides, it governs menstrual cycles in women's bodies, and so many other things. So we have the moon, and then we have the High Priestess in the tarot, which is the card that comes after the Magician card. And she is going to be helping us to understand this core fundamental power behind the feminine principle, behind the emotion, behind connection, behind sensitivity, the intuition. And so we're going to save a really beautiful space to really talk about intuition, because that's a huge part of personal alchemy. And then we're going to talk about the Chariot, which is the card of Cancer. And interestingly, this card comes at the end of the first phase of the major arcana. It's 3 phases of 7. There are 3 main initiations, and the Chariot is the end of the first one, which is part of why this card is so important, and why the sign of Cancer is so fundamentally intrinsic in our own growth process. Because from here on out, with the zodiac signs, we're moving out of the realm of the personal. We're moving out of the realm of pure self-understanding into self-expression in the external, which is what we enter into in the sign of Leo. And this really does come up a lot when we look at the seasons, when we look at how these seasons are progressing, how these signs weave their way through that and show these different parts of how we're experiencing and expressing ourselves. And then finally, we're going to look at the 2, the 3, and the 4 of Cups, which really does show, again, that decan progression of the sign of Cancer. There's some really beautiful wisdom there. And of course, we're going to be meeting these energies that we're going to be moving through for the next season, and what kind of initiations they're going to be taking us through. Also, which is not in this bullet point, but very relevant as well, is a nod to the Queen of Cups, who really is the encompassing personality, the encompassing archetype of all of this in so many ways. And of course, the key word to the sign of Cancer is I feel.
Hey, Amy Moonsong here again. Just wanted to let you know that each one of these videos that you're watching today is part of a much larger course that spans the entire year, that goes through every season of the year, that goes through every zodiac sign of the year, and that teaches you about the archetypes associated with it, as well as the tarot cards that are connected to it. If you're interested in learning more about personal development through this medium of learning, please click the link below and I will reach out to you and give you more information on how you can join the group. We would love to have you.